Greetings, everybody. It's Jim. Science fiction, military history, and fantasy role playing all have their place on the shelves of every game store in the known universe, right? But have you ever seen all three combined into one product? Not necessarily one game, but there is one that had them all in one product. SPI trying to get more people into the hobby and explain itself during a time where it definitely wasn't the mass appeal like it is now, came out with a product with three micro games to do so. And I said, there's two things that caught my eye about that when I seen it on eBay. First, three micro games I must have. The second thing is it was an introduction for sales. And me being a guy that's been in sales for board games all his life, this definitely piqued my interest because I wanted to see how they were going to do it, because this was back before gaming was that super popular, super niche. How do you get people into a game that's definitely more for really mathy nerds? How do you draw people in? What was their take? Did they succeed with it or did it fail? Actually, it's got a little bit of both. It does some things really well, and then it did some things very terribly. Today, I'm going to be going over with you SPI's attempt to introduce you to adventure gaming. This series is going to be split up into 4 videos. Of course, each game is going to have their own video because there's a lot to talk about each one. This one's going to be the overview of the product itself. Now, the thing is, SPI wanted to get people not only into the gaming hobby in general. They do, but the truth is they want them to get into their stuff, right? Their products. And what are their major products? Historical wargaming. And it doesn't take too long once you get through all 3 of these games that you learn that, yes, they put all the effort in the Napoleon at Waterloo. And it's a magazine, right? It comes in a magazine format. Much like Moves Magazine or Strategy and Tactics, where they had the counters in it, and you take the staples out, and then these games all come apart. And they are all self-contained, okay? Some better than others, though. But let's go over the 3. Napoleon at Waterloo, the main board game, the Creatures at 8 New York. Of course, they're thinking that if people like this, they'll go right to the shelf and get the Creatures at 8 Sheboygan. And then you have the Tower of Azan, which is their small paragraph adventure game, solo game, and that has some interesting innovations to it, much like the Curse of the Stainless Steel Rat. And it usually has to go with going through doors and going through floors. So that's pretty interesting. Moonbase Clavius is out on Kickstarter right now, and it's Kerry Anderson's game of lunar infantry combat between the United States Space Force and China's PLAAF on the moon, set in the year 2035. Now, if you look at that artwork very carefully, GURPS players, you probably recognize it, and anybody that's played Illuminati and what have you, it's Dan Smith. After I did that GURPS video for about 3rd edition, somebody told Dan that I was talking up his artwork. He contacted me, I contacted him back, and it was like boom, boomity. Next thing you know, we got him drawn for Moonbase Clavius, and it's going to be definitely a working relationship for other projects in the future. I know it. All right, so let's go over the production values of all this and the hits and misses that they did. Now, the wins are all about Napoleon at Waterloo. This is really what they wanted people to play. 4 pages of rules, really nicely done. I wouldn't say there's anything that really would complicate things, with the exception of the era of games at the time. We have to remember that most people's idea of board games was Risk and Monopoly being the complicated ones. And that's very important. So even though there's only 4 pages of rules, and we could say by today's standards that's not a big deal, it's really making it tough. Now the big thing is the rules are all self-contained in its own little booklet. The map by itself is, you could play that and then have the rules as a reference. And why am I making a big stink about that? Oh, wait for it, folks. But on the back of this, there is not any essential information. There's some beautiful examples here of attacks, which is definitely needed, in wargaming, and they had the space that they did it. And then they have some information about solitaire play, but none of it is essential to learning the rules as you're playing along. Do we want an example of how not to do this? Let's continue to the Creatures at 8 New York. Okay, now like I said, most games were Monopoly and Risk at the time, so they wanted to hedge their bets. They know they wanted people to get into the historical wargaming, but the Creatures of the Day New York is only about maybe a page of rules if you count take the pictures into consideration, and it's not very complicated. However, here's the map. Forget a rule? Oh, you have to deconstruct the whole game. I mean, there's only a few counters on the board at one time, but still, you don't want to do this. So this was a big mistake. This is how your first impression is going to be that of frustration with this. Unless they had a Xerox to copy the rules, and it could have been avoided, because in this booklet, there were a lot of, as you can imagine, advertisements. You know, that's the idea. Hey, did you like that game, kid? Pick one of our other ones. Go for it. So they had the ability to put ads on the back of these pages, but they didn't do it. I can't understand it. This was a big, big, big fail. If this was the first game that they chose to play because it's a little bit shorter, you know, again, being 2 pages rules as opposed to 4 pages, this would have been their first impression. Not this. And this plays well. You know, so that's really frustrating. And of course, the Tower of Azan, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with this one. You know, you got the little character sheet on the back here, but basically you're just flipping through. You know, you're not having to worry. You're flipping through anyway because it's a paragraph game, right? You're going through and you're choose your own adventure kind of thing. So I'll go over that. But the biggest fail was this one right here. And as I go through these games, this is the big winner. Creatures of the Day New York, even though, you know, long story short, this is the big winner. Creatures of the Day New York is fine enough as a game just for fun and stuff like that. But it is, of course, the frustrating part. But as far as games go, this one, and I'll go over this in its own video, this was a what the hell were you guys thinking kind of thing. Okay, so basically there were, you know, as a guy that sells games, man, first impressions mean everything. And that's just true across the board. And if they were trying to get people into wargaming and they spent all that time and effort to make the 3 games, and then they come up with those goofs for sales, it could be the typical SPI rush jobs that I've heard so much about, production value. But this was, considering that, you know, this was something to get people into all their games, this should have definitely taken a little bit more time play testing. Because if you would have given this product to somebody else, they would have found that. They obviously didn't play. They play tested this, or I'm sorry, they play tested this. There's no doubt in my mind. But this one they probably lightly play tested. This they certainly something didn't go right. But if you would have play tested the entire product, is what they should have done. And some kid would have been like, hey, I can't play the Creatures of the Day New York because I got to flip the dang map and I don't have a photocopier. And so they lose out. Anyway, guys, that's the introduction to the basic idea of all the games and how it relates to sales. And I hope you get something from that. And I'll see you next video where we go over the games themselves.